I've been putting together my own I've been putting together my own family tree on Ancestry for about 5 years now. When I started, I knew very little about any of my ancestors beyond my grandparents. Every now and again I heard about family reunions and such, but never really took much interest in them. When my grandparents were getting older, I reflected that they wouldn't be around forever, and I did what I could to record their stories. I also began to look into my ancestors. I reflected on how the past is so quickly and easily forgotten, and if we don't have a good family history, we'll have a poor one to pass on to our children. I've personally found my life enriched by my engagement with the study of my family history. It has helped me to appreciate my origins and roots and to value my place in history. I encourage everyone to take advantage of the digital revolution that has happened since the last reunion and scan, photograph, record and share our joint heritage so that when our children have to do projects for school, they have some material to work with. The photos and mementos that you have in your possession are worth preserving and passing on to future generations. Since then, I've been developing my family tree on ancestry.com, which includes the family of my third great-grandfather, George William Francis. Part of my research has involved trying to gain photos of my ancestors, and I've been fortunate that I have pictures of most of my ancestors back to my second great-grandparents. Several years ago, I came to Adelaide and met up with Marigold, who shared with me some of the photos she had, which are now for the most part up on Ancestry. Along with this, recently I've been extending the work of my grandmother Jill Cohn, Marigold's mother Dorothy Wright, and Grandma Jill's sister, my great-grandaunt Lily Wilmot. In 1965 they did genealogical research as a prelude to the 1965 family reunion to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the death of George William Francis. In preparation for this reunion, I've turned my attention to some of the records that weren't found by the last generation of family historians and tried to fill in some of the gaps in our knowledge. On Ancestry, I've found what I'm pretty sure are the death records for George William Francis's first wife, Mary Ann Allnut, and his mother, Frances Nee Hatt. It is very fortunate that these days many helpful records are online, and a trip to England to research the family, though it would be fun, is not really necessary anymore. Very briefly, it appears that they died in very quick succession in the year 1832. Mary Ann, on about the 11th of August 1832, in the burial registers at age 28. She'd only been married to George William Francis for 4 years, and they had 2 children. Though I might point out we're still missing the baptism record for Mary Ann Francis, who was their second child. This is probably because of the poor state of the baptismal records at St Mary Whitechapel, where we find her brother George, who died about the 20th June 1834, which are all out of order and some may be missing. It appears Frances, George William's mother, was buried at St Dunstan's, Stepney, on the 9th of May 1832, a couple of months before George William's wife Mary Ann died. It had been suggested by Barbara Best that Mary Ann might have died in childbirth, but the proximity of these deaths suggested to me that the deaths might have been the result of some kind of epidemic. Googling based on this idea, I found that there was indeed an epidemic that swept through East London in 1832, and the disease was cholera. Regardless of whether it was the case that the London cholera epidemic of 1832 claimed these 2 lives, what resulted was, as we know, that George was left raising 2 children and without his wife or mother. The other result of identifying these records is that we now know that George William Francis's mother, Frances, was 58 years old when she died, giving a year of birth of 1774. This also points to other records and reveals that though there were many hats in the life of George William Francis, they weren't as related as was supposed by the previous generation of family historians of the Francis family. When George William married Anne Hatt in 1838, some 6 years later, he was marrying the daughter of a local shoe salesman who also attended the same church as him. He had lost his father the previous year in 1837, and Anne belonged to a large family of 10 children, and her father had died earlier in the year that she was married to George William Francis. It seems there was therefore an element of expediency in their marriage. Anne needed to be supported, and George William needed support. We know about Anne's family largely through a letter written by her mother to Emily Louisa Francis, soon to be Anson, which, thanks to Marigold, I've put a scan of on Ancestry under Frances Cecilia, known as Cecilia Rudd. Why she prefixed her name with Frances, I am not quite sure, as this letter is the only time that she does so in a record to my knowledge. Maybe as a gesture to the lack of the other grandmother, she too would have been Grandmother Hatt. I was quite happy in my recent researches to put some dates around these lives. Anne Hatt's mother, and father in particular. I am able to ascertain, with a fair degree of confidence, the dates for Anne's father as 1762 to 1838 and her mother as 1787 to 1860. I found first the marriage record for Frances Cecilia, Anne's mother, discovering that her surname was Rudd, and then following the census record that revealed her birth was at Sonning in Berkshire, I got the records for Sonning and found her birth record in the parish registers there. These records somewhat round out our knowledge of the personal and family record of the Francis family. While the previous generation well explored George William's paternal line, we now know more of his other family lines, which gives us a richer appreciation of the social context of his life. I'm sure that the next generation of family historians interested in the Francis story will take these researches even further, but it's good to be able to offer up some new ideas and a richer context for the Francis story. If you're interested in following my researches, please send me an email and I will send you an invitation to the family tree I have on Ancestry. There's no charge for this, and you can follow and contribute to the research that I and a number of others are doing. If you'd like my email address, please come and speak to me or ask Marigold, who can pass it on to you. As I'm not actually at the reunion, you can talk to my parents who are there, that's Ian Cohn and Susan Cohn, and I'm sure that they would be happy to pass on your email to me, or pass on my email address to you. Thanks for your time. I hope you enjoy the reunion.